Assalamu alaikum. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Today's announcements. So, IFGSTL's Eid al-Adha Bazaar will held on Saturday, June 1st at IFGSTL premises in the gym. It's in the gym on 1st of June. IFGSTL Hajj workshop for youth titled Seeking the Journey will held on May 18th, Saturday from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. in the Iqra library. Registration is required. Another IFGSTL Hajj workshop, this is for more for the adults, Perfecting the Journey with Sheikh Hamza and Mufti Asif will held on May 18th, also Saturday in the Tafsir Hall from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Remember that for the youth is in Iqra library, and timing is 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. for youth and 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. for adult also, but it's in the Tafsir Hall. Registration for ADS Tarbiyah camp are open. The camp is designed for boys and girls aged 7 to 14 years. Tarbiyah camp by ADS for ages 7 to 14 years. Our weekly Seerah program has been started with Sheikh Hamza continuing every Monday, but it's on after Maghrib Salah. So it is now after Maghrib Salah, and Maghrib is currently at 8:06 p.m. IFGSTL Hajj series with Sheikh Hamza Imtiaz, the merits of Hajj and blessings of Makkah and Medina, with reflection drawn from the Ibn Hajar's Hadith collection, will be held on Tuesday after Fajr and Maghrib and Wednesday after Fajr. This is a Khatra program that will be going after Fajr and Maghrib Salah, and on Wednesday after Fajr only. Al-Salam Day School's annual Seerah Trivia Night will held on Saturday, May 18th at IFGSTL Gym. Saturday, May 18th, IFGSTL Gym. It's Al-Salam Day School's Trivia Night. This event is open to 11 years and older, but registration is required. ADS High School students are selling some cookies and other stuff to raise fund for their own programs. Mr. Girls Halqa with Sister Fariha Khan will be happening at Iqra Library 1:20 p.m. tomorrow, Saturday, tomorrow on May 11th, inshallah. There is lunch is on sale in the lobby also. Jazakallah khair. And today's Imam is Atif Gohar. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي حق من ذكر وحق من عبد وأنصر من ابتغي وأرأف من ملك وأجود من سئل وأوسع من أعطى كل شيء هالك إلا وجهك لن تطاع إلا بإذنك ولن تعصى إلا بعلمك تطاع فتشكن وتعصى فتغفر اللهم أنت أقرب شهيد وأدنى حفيظ اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. A unique feature that Islam has is that each person has a direct link between them and Allah. And this is a unique feature Islam has. And although we have been in Islam for our whole entire lives, there are certain aspects that we don't really appreciate or value because we've been in it in our whole lives. And so we can't always fully appreciate it. And I remember one day I was having a conversation with a recent convert. And these are always very interesting conversations to have because they notice aspects about Islam that we have taken for granted that would never really stuck out to us. And I asked him a question, the usual question, what was your journey to Islam? What feature about Islam really drew you in? Why did you leave your old faith? And what did you see in Islam that was more compelling to you? And so one of the things that he mentioned and that stuck out to him is that he came from a Christian faith. And he always said it irked him and it kind of bugged him that in the Christian faith you don't have a direct link between you and God. That there's a middleman, there's somebody in between you and God. And he said it didn't really feel right to him, that didn't sit well with him. And he said that when he came to know about Islam, and he came to know that in Islam there's a direct link between a person and their relationship and Allah, that's what really drew him in, and that's what really compelled him to Islam. And so although we have been in Islam our whole entire lives, there are certain features that we haven't really noticed and we have taken for granted. And one of these is a direct link between us and Allah. And this is something that has been highlighted in the Quran in many instances, many places. Many times in the Quran, there were times when the Sahaba would ask the Prophet ﷺ a question. And Allah would reveal in ayah answering their question, but He would instruct the Prophet to go and answer them. He would say, "O Prophet of Allah, they ask you this question, you go and answer them this way." For example, وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الرُّوحِ, that the people that are asking you, O Prophet of Allah, about the ruh, قُلِ الرُّوحُ مِنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّي, you tell them that the ruh is from the matters of my Lord. وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْخَمْرِ وَالْمَيْسِرِ, they ask you about alcohol and its prohibitions. Then tell them, O Prophet of Allah, that alcohol, it has minimal benefits and its harms greatly outweigh its benefits. وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الشَّهْرِ الْحَرَامِ قِتَالٍ فِيهِ قُلْ قِتَالٌ فِيهِ كَبِيرٌ, they ask you, O Prophet of Allah, about the sacred months. Tell them that in the sacred months fighting is a big sin. And so each one of these instances, when the Sahaba asked the Prophet ﷺ a question, Allah came with the answer and He instructed the Prophet to go and answer them. But in one instance, the Sahaba asked the Prophet ﷺ a question, And Allah answered it himself, and he did not instruct the Prophet to go and answer them. He removed the Prophet ﷺ from that picture. And this was when they asked, وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ, that my slaves are asking you about me, فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ, I will answer myself, I am close to all of my slaves. And in this moment, he removes the Prophet ﷺ from the picture, because he wants there to be a direct link, a direct connection between Allah and his slaves. He does not want there to be any type of middleman. And so we see that we have a direct between us and Allah, and that is through our du'as. We have a perfect opportunity to talk to Allah through our du'as, a direct connection between us and Allah. Really put everything on the table. All the problems that we're facing, all the challenges that we have gone through, any help that we need, and any voice that we want to be heard, we lay it all in our du'a, and we make sure that Allah is the one that hears us. But although we have been making du'a for our whole entire lives, there are certain misconceptions, certain mistakes that come with that. You know, when you have been doing something your whole entire life and it's very repetitive for you, sometimes mistakes creep in and you haven't realized those mistakes. And so I'd like to highlight some of the mistakes that possibly we fall into when making dua. One of those is that when we make dua, we picture that after making dua, the perfect world will be created for us. Sometimes we make dua and we expect all our problems to go away, and then we're able to take the next step. But this is not what dua means. At times, you have to make dua and you have to accept there will be challenges and there will be problems. And you continue moving forward, and you will realize that the end outcome will be better than if you never made that dua. And the example of this in the Quran is that of Musa alayhi salam's mother. That when Fir'aun gave the decree and the order to kill all the children, Musa alayhi salam's mother was very worried. And so she made dua to Allah that her child be saved. But after she made that dua, did Fir'aun stop killing children? Did he send out an order to cease the killing of children? It didn't happen. And so she knew that there's still going to be problems, there's still going to be challenges. But she put her trust in Allah, and she put Musa alayhi salam in the river and sent him on his way. And so sometimes when we make dua, we have to accept that there will be challenges, there will be problems, the end outcome will be better. What was the end outcome of Musa alayhi salam? He grew up in that same very palace that gave the order to kill all those children. That was his end outcome. It was much better. And I remember I was talking to a friend of mine, and he was explaining his situation and the difficulty he's going through, and he was talking about marriage, and he was talking about his home situation, that he wants to get married, but his home state is it's a very sticky situation to be in, and he doesn't know if he feels comfortable bringing somebody else into his house. And so he says that he's been making dua to Allah for a very long time, and he's waiting for his home situation to get better, and then he'll think about maybe moving forward in the marriage process. And it was at this time that I told him that that's not what dua actually means. It doesn't mean that all your problems will be removed. It means that you will make dua, you will have the challenges, but the end outcome will be better. So you don't always have to continue waiting and waiting and waiting for all your problems to be gone, because that's not what happened to Musa alayhi salam's mother. The problems were still there, but she made dua, and the end outcome was a more favorable outcome. And another possible mistake that we come into when making dua is that Allah will answer your dua according to the dunya system. Allah has created the dunya for a reason, and it has come with many systems. And your dua will be answered within that dunya system. And so I'll give an example. A person, he makes dua that he gets a job. A person makes dua that he is blessed with a job. It's very unlikely that the next day he'll get a call from a company saying, we want to hire you for our job. Very unlikely. Rather, what will happen is that Allah will make him take the right steps into getting that job that he wants. Allah will make him apply to the company that's going to hire him. Allah will make him write things in the resume that that company is looking for. And Allah will inspire him to say things in his interview that the company wants to hear. At the end, the company hires him. And so there's something to notice here, And that is that from a human perspective, it looks like I'm the one that applied to that company. I was the one that sent in that resume, and I was the one that took the interview, and I killed it. And so I got the job. So from a human perspective, it looks like you did everything yourself. But we have to keep in mind that when you make dua, you are actually asking Allah to guide you into getting your dua answered within the dunya system. And all those steps that you took along the way was Allah making you take those steps. And this is where true shukr also comes in. True shukr is realizing that every step that you took was not something that you took by your own actions or because you thought of it yourself. Rather, every step you took was Allah inspiring you to take that step in order for your dua to be answered. And so many times, we make many different du'as. We make dua that, oh Allah, make me wealthier. And we say that Allah can do anything, right? A lot of times we hear this, so we make dua that, oh Allah, make me very rich. And we say Allah can do anything. It's not about what Allah can do. Sometimes it's about what Allah will do. And Allah, the way He answers du'as within the dunya system, you're not going to wake up the next day and find $100,000 in your bank account. Rather, Allah will inspire you to take certain steps, maybe invest in certain stocks, maybe invest in certain properties, and then those will become more favorable for you. And so sometimes when we make dua, we expect a magical outcome to happen at the end. But that's not the way that Allah works. Rather, He'll answer every single one of your du'as within the dunya system. And that's the expectation that we should have from Allah. And another mistake or common practice that we fall into, that we think that every dua is the same. Every dua that we make is not the same. And we know this from the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, where he says that ad-du'a'u silahul mu'min. The dua is the weapon of a believer. And so the scholars of hadith, they look at this and they comment. And they say that there's two aspects here. One is that a weapon is only as strong as its wielder. A weapon is only as strong as its wielder. So you take the example of a sword. Let's say you have a sword. Depending on who's holding it and who's swinging with it, it'll make a difference. If it's a guy who's much larger in size and he swings that sword with full force, it'll leave a deeper cut. If it's a person who's much smaller in stature, maybe he doesn't have as much force behind his swing, it'll leave more of a shallow cut. And so we see, although the sword is the same, it's the same weapon, the mark it leaves and the deep of a cut it gives depends on the wielder. And we are wielding dua, and so we have to work on ourselves. Just as the person, when he has a sword, he has to do certain exercises. He has to strengthen certain muscles. He has to practice certain swings in motion. And that's how he gets better in using that sword. For us, dua is the same way. We have to strengthen our connection with Allah. We have to strengthen our bond with Allah. And then our du'as will be heard even louder in the heavens. And the second aspect to this is that when you have a weapon, you also have to make sure you maintain it. You have to make sure the blade is not chipped. You have to make sure it doesn't get rusted. You have to make sure you polish it, you keep it shiny. These are also aspects that are related there. And so our du'as work in the same way. We can't just make a dua as a Santa Claus wish list. And when we say, oh Allah, bless me with this, and then bless me with this, and I'd like this on this day, and instead of making it into a Santa Claus wish list, we should really make it into more of a bonding moment between us and Allah. And you put your full heart into that dua, and you bring salawat into that dua, and you praise Allah in different fashions in that dua. All these are us really polishing that sword, keeping that sword shiny, and making sure there's no rust or any type of chip on that blade. When we make that dua, we ask Allah, we give salawat upon Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, we praise Allah in different ways, and this is the way that we maintain that sword. And so we have to keep in mind that not every dua we make is the same. Depending on how much heart we put in, and depending on the things that we say in that dua, it's heard differently in the heavens. And another common mistake and misconception that we may fall into is that we use dua on a reactionary basis when it should be used more on a preventative basis. I remember back when I was in my first year of madrasa, our teacher, he told us that make dua before an affliction falls from the heavens onto you. Make dua that you are saved from affliction before it falls from the heavens. Because once it befalls you, it's going to stay with you for that period of time it is destined to be with you. And so you should make dua before it even hits you, before it even comes to you. And we see the same principle being highlighted in the du'as of the Prophet ﷺ, where he makes dua that Allah protects him from leprosy, وَمِن سَيِّئِ الْأَقْسَامِ, and from evil illnesses. And we see that the Prophet ﷺ was never afflicted with leprosy. He was never afflicted with leprosy. And so why was he making dua of protection from leprosy? It was because before it even befalls him, before he's even sick with that type of illness, he's asking Allah for protection from it. And we also noticed that leprosy was a common illness in his time. And so we should mention in our du'as common illnesses and common diseases in our time. And we should ask Allah to protect us from those diseases before we are even afflicted with them. So we should ask Allah to protect us from any type of cancer, protect us from diabetes, protect us from arthritis, maybe protect us from Alzheimer's and our old age. We should use dua not merely on a reactionary basis, but also on a preventative basis. Before an affliction hits us, before we are struck ill with something, we should ask Allah to save us from it. Because once it comes, it will be there for you for a portion of time, it's destined. But if you catch it before it even befalls you, then you have saved yourself a great deal of trouble. And so to wrap up, I would like to go over some of these points again. So the first point that we mentioned about some of the misconceptions and some of the mistakes that we have when making dua is that the perfect world will not be created for you. You have to understand there will be challenges, problems, continue on. Just as Musa alayhi salam's mother did. The end outcome will be better, just as it was for Musa alayhi salam growing up in the palace of Fir'aun. And then the second point that we mentioned was that Allah will answer your dua within the dunya system. And so don't expect a magical outcome to happen after making dua. Expect that it will be answered within the dunya system, and also notice that that is not your own thinking, that is Allah making you take the right steps into taking every single action. And the third that we noticed was that not all du'as are the same. Some du'as, they differ depending on how much we polish that sword, depending on how we strengthen our own bond with Allah. And the fourth was that we use dua as a preventative measure, not only as a reactionary measure. الحمد لله علي الذات عظيم الصفات سميع السمات كبير الشان جليل القدر رفيع الذكر مطاع الأمر جري البرهان فخيم الاسم غزيل علم وسيع حلم كثير غفران جميل الثناء جزيل العطاء مجيب الدعاء عميم الإحسان. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وقال ربكم ادعوني أستجب لكم إن الذين يستكبرون عن عبادتي سيدخلون جهنم داخرين. بارك الله لنا ولكم في القرآن العظيم ونفعنا وإياكم بالآيات والذكر الحكيم. أستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أرحم أمتي بأمتي أبو بكر وأشدهم في أمر الله عمر وأصدقهم حياء عثمان وقضاهم علي وفاطمة سيدة نساء أهل الجنة والحسن والحسين سيدا شباب أهل الجنة وحمزة أسد الله وأسد رسوله. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون فاذكروني أذكركم واشكروني ولا تكفرون وأقيموا الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
Please make sure that all the gaps are filled in. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. عما يتساءلون عن النبأ العظيم الذي هم فيه مختلفون كلا سيعلمون ثم كلا سيعلمون ألم نجعل الأرض مهادا والجبال أوتادا وخلقناكم أزواجا وجعلنا نومكم سباتا وجعلنا الليل لباسا وجعلنا النهار معاشا وبنينا فوقكم سبعا شدادا وجعلنا سراجا وهاجا وأنزلنا من المعصرات ماء ثجاجا لنخرج به حبا ونباتا وجنات ألفافا. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر.
الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين إن يوم الفصل كان ميقاتا يوم ينفخ في الصور فتأتون أفواجا وفتحت السماء فكانت أبوابا وسيرت الجبال فكانت سرابا إن جهنم كانت مرصادا للطاغين مآبا لابثين فيها أحقابا لا يذوقون فيها بردا ولا شرابا إلا حميما وغساقا جزاء وفاقا. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. Please pass around the donation boxes and donate generously, inshallah.